You're listening to Radio France International. It's just coming up to 49 minutes past the hour. Time now for our Live on Live. And it's a year since the revelations in the so-called Panama Papers exposed the questionable tax arrangements of thousands of wealthy people, including some high-profile politicians. The trove of 11.5 million digital records from the Panamanian law firm Mossack Fonseca triggered dozens of investigations, and it also dealt a big blow to Panama as an offshore financial hub. But for campaigners against tax fraud and tax avoidance, there's still a lot to be done. I'm joined now by Dominique Plihon of the organisation Attac, which promotes an alternative style economy. It's an organisation which has put forward a series of proposals to deal with tax avoidance or tax fraud here in France. That's ahead of the presidential elections, of course. Now, Attac claims that if its measures were implemented, then the government would claw back up to 200 billion euros of public money, which might then be used on, I don't know, finance, health, housing. So, Dominique, how would your message allow the government to claw back this huge sum of money?
Well, almost half of it would come from stopping tax avoidance. Which is extremely important in most of our European countries, but in France in particular. And also another part of it would come from the stopping of what we may call the tax breaks. In France, we have at least 400 types of tax breaks. And the most important one is the CICE. So I don't know how to translate it. Crédit d'impôt. So it's a tax break for competitiveness and employment, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's a tax credit designed to encourage competitiveness and employment as well.
We think that this tax break is inefficient and unfair. It's inefficient because reports have come about this measure, which has been in action from 2014. So we have some ways to measure the effectiveness of this tax break, and it doesn't work. It didn't have any specific or significant impact on employment or on investment, business investment. So we think it's inefficient, and it's unfair because most of this money is in fact coming from the households and going back to the business sector.
Yes, because it's funded by an increase in VAT, I think.
Exactly,
isn't it?
exactly. Yeah. So we think it should be stopped, and we could get back at least 40 billions of euros coming from this tax, from this stopping this measure. And also we are very much in favor of FTT, financial transactions tax, which is not seriously implemented in France and in European countries. So as you may know, there is a reinforced cooperation now in Europe. There is an attempt to have a European financial taxation. And in France, also, the successive government say that they would implement it, but they don't do it.
Yeah, we used to hear a lot about this so-called Robin Hood tax.
Exactly.
And so where are we now on that in Europe?
Well,
which countries?
We have 11 countries which are trying to negotiate this new taxation. Great Britain, of course, is out of it, but countries like largest other countries like France, Germany, Spain, Italy are in favor of this taxation. But unfortunately, they did not come to an agreement. And recently it was Belgium, small country, Belgium, which stopped the negotiation. So it's a very tricky negotiation. So, but we are very much in favor of this taxation, and we think that in the future we are fairly optimistic. We think it will come into implementation because the public opinion, most people are in favor of that taxation. So we think that if we have a progressive government and we have a sufficient pressure coming from the people, and then we think we can have that kind of measure in the future. So our idea is the following: is that in France, as in most European countries, we don't have excessive public expenditures. In fact, we have on the contrary, tax erosion. We have a tax erosion coming from tax avoidance, but also from tax competition. And we think that we have to work in such a way as to reduce this type of reduction of government income. This is the main, should be the main target, not reducing public expenditure, but on the contrary, stopping tax evasion and stopping also tax competition. And if we do that, then in most countries, and in France in particular, our public deficit, government deficit, will be very seriously reduced. We would not have any problem in terms of government.
If the government was simply able to collect that tax owed.
Exactly.
Well, on a wider scale, then, we've looked a little bit about France, but since the eruption of the Panama Papers scandal, there have been a lot of changes. Panama was the last major financial centre which still refused exchanges of banking information. And of course, that gave other countries a bit of an excuse not to improve their exchange of information. Now, that's unacceptable now. Pretty much every country has signed up to exchange information. There is no longer any banking secrecy, according to the OECD. That's surely a good move.
Yes, it's a very good move.
What more needs to be done?
But it's not enough. We think that, for instance, a few more steps should be taken if really we want to stop tax avoidance. For instance, we need to have a public reporting by transnational corporations on their activity profits in their foreign subsidies, that is, in tax havens. And if we would have that kind of measure, then the pressure coming from public opinion on
a blacklist you're talking about?
No, it's not a blacklist. We would have all corporations should publish their activities, their profits in tax havens. And if we would know that, then it would be very easy for us, for the NGOs, but also for the public opinion, to say, look, this corporation doesn't pay its tax because it puts a lot of its profits in tax haven. So this is something which we ask for. In fact, there have been some progress made in this direction at the European level and in some countries, but that's not enough. So this is one thing we ask for. Another idea, another public proposition is to have public registry of trusts and funds regarding offshore subsidiaries. In some countries, I think in Great Britain, there have been some progress in this direction, but in other countries like France or in mainland Europe, it's not the case. So we think that this measure would be also a very important step forward to stop tax avoidance. Another thing we are defending is to have a full protection of whistleblowers. We think that whistleblowers are playing a very important role. We saw that for the Panama Papers, for the LuxLeaks scandals and other scandals. We think it's very important to protect them so that they can do the job and to show where tax avoidance is happening. So we have a few measures like that which should be implemented if we really want to eradicate tax evasion.
Right. Now, I heard Pierre Moscovici, who I think is in charge of these things at European level, saying that the EU planned to move against the intermediaries who help businesses and people evade tax. Presumably that's the accountants, the lawyers. Are you hopeful that will happen sometime soon?
No, I am. We are very skeptical because, in fact, if you look at the recent moves of the Juncker Commission, in fact, it's most of the time to reduce the level of regulation on financial intermediaries. So I think this declaration by Mr. Moscovici is not we don't take it very seriously.
Right.
Yes.
Cosmetic.
Yes, I think so.
Right. Give us an idea in France, what type of people, what type of companies are avoiding paying tax or even fraudulently not paying tax? And where do they go?
Well, I think in France, as in most other countries, it's rich people, of course, who are avoiding tax, but also large corporations. And we have two or three types of corporation. One is the large banks, like BNP Paribas, Société Générale, Crédit Agricole, but I think if you go into Great Britain, you would have Barclays and some other banks like that, or in Germany, Dutch Bank. So all these large banks are organizing tax avoidance, not only for themselves, but also for their customers. So they are the ones who are really the most important actors organizing tax evasion. But also we have industrial corporations in France like Renault in the car industry, or in the energy sector like Total. But what is very striking for us is that we have government control groups like EDF in the electricity production, which is controlled by 83% by the government, which is practicing tax avoidance, which is something very shocking for us, and we think that it should be denounced, it should be stopped.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We don't have a great deal more time. It hasn't so far been a big element in the French presidential campaign. Perhaps we'll hear more about it tonight, or perhaps not. My thanks to Dominique Plihon of Attac, the alternative economy organisation, which has a network throughout most of the European Union and is very well known here in France. That's it from us. Join us again at the same time tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.